Greetings everybody, Ben here from TheVirtualEconomist, and I know what you're thinking. Another TF2 versus Overwatch video? Well, yes, that is what I'm making, isn't it? While it seems like everybody's jumped on to share their thoughts about these two seemingly similar games, my video has something different. A clickbait video I'm approaching it from a different angle. The videos I've seen so far seem to make one thing clear, that TF2 and Overwatch are different games, and that they can coexist. I agree with this. I think that everybody can agree with this. These games, while they do share the same game concept, a class-based team shooter, they're still very, very different games, and I don't really expect one game to just suddenly take over the other. For now, I'm just gonna agree with what everybody else is saying. TF2 and Overwatch are different games, and that they can coexist. However, I am not gonna discount that these games do appeal to the same audience. If someone loves TF2, chances are they're gonna give Overwatch a go. And who can blame them? People are always looking for something fresh, and Overwatch gives that to them. Bright new characters, graphics, and of course backed up by the legendary Blizzard Studios. And the game doesn't seem to be disappointing. Blizzard is throwing its heart and soul into the game, and since its announcement, we have seen the game evolve into a position that seems to put it in line in becoming another Blizzard mega success. I mean, it's already holding in the top 5 most streamed games on Twitch, something that TF2 has not even gotten close to. Now, as a TF2 fan, this is the time when you might start to panic. If Overwatch is so good, then will TF2 die? Well, no, TF2 will not die. I've already said this, and I think we can clearly see that it is not going to. Since Overwatch's release, I really haven't seen a mass exodus of TF2 players to go and play the game. Like, obviously there are some TF2 players leaving, but it's not going to be a huge amount, and a lot of people who play Overwatch are going to come back to TF2 at some point. You might be thinking to yourself at this point, well, what's the point of this video? I mean, you're kind of just agreeing with what everybody else has already been saying. Well, let's get to where I differ, and to do that, let's take a very quick and brief history lesson. Before the advent of Overwatch, TF2 lived in an industry with no real competition. Valve had a virtual monopoly on class-based shooters, and it really wasn't under any outside pressure. With Overwatch's release, however, this is no longer the case. TF2 doesn't live in its own world anymore. It is joined by other titles of the same genre of game. Theoretically, this should be great for both games. Market capitalism seems to show that if brands compete, you save, and not just at Sleep Country. When brands compete, they are forced to make better products and win over new customers. But this is actually where I am most concerned. To me, it is a very real concern that Valve cannot adequately compete with Blizzard. To me, Valve is killing TF2, not Overwatch. Well, why do I think this? Recently, I feel TF2 has gotten very lackluster updates with incredibly slow response times with little to no testing from Valve. There are many examples, but I feel the best example of this is in the competitive update. When competitive was first officially announced, people were hyped, and it makes sense. However, it took almost a year and a half before we finally got something from Valve, the competitive beta. But even when the update was shipped, it still contained tons of problems. Hackers reigned free, and without weapon restrictions, degenerate tactics emerged. It just looked like Valve hadn't quite put the effort it needed to into the update. I've heard it argued many a time now that Valve is paying closer attention to TF2 than it has in the past, that it is somehow gearing up to compete with Blizzard. However, I don't mean to hate on the people who think this, but it is just utter BS. As I said, I don't see there being any feasible way that Valve, at its current pace, can compete with a company like Blizzard. It just isn't possible. Blizzard has hundreds of developers working on Overwatch around the clock. At Valve, I searched around the internet for an estimated number working on TF2, and I could only find estimates in the 20s to 30s. Holy crap, this is where I'm really concerned. If Valve isn't competing, it seems that they almost don't care enough about their own game, and that they're just abandoning it. And if they do that, they can toss the brands compete you save slogan right out the window. And it sucks for TF2 fans. While many were looking at Overwatch as TF2's killer, I had my hopes high that Valve would quickly respond with an amazing update that makes TF2 so much more than it has ever been before. But as the weeks go on, and we have literally heard nothing from Valve, I'm starting to fear the worst. I mean, Overwatch's game director Jeff Kaplan just responded to a post on the Battle.net forums detailing exactly what the developers are currently working on. And I'm already getting hyped for Overwatch's new competitive mode, something that, according to the forums post, is being completely redesigned to reflect a different direction in just a few months. If Blizzard can remake its entire matchmaking system in such a short time, why the hell can't Valve do it in a year? TF2 still makes Valve millions of dollars, and it is honestly incomprehensible how the game can feel so neglected sometimes. Shouldn't Valve keep the money rolling in with awesome new updates as frequently as possible? You'd think so, but this is obviously not the case. But not all is lost for TF2. We are now entering a golden age for class-based shooters, with games like Overwatch, Battleborn, and Paragon all hitting the market soon. Now, it may seem counterintuitive at first, but with all these new games, we can actually expect more people to be interested in TF2. Thousands of new players are now entering the realm of class-based shooters to play games like Overwatch. But here's what's important. These are players that may have never played TF2 or even heard of it before Overwatch. If anything, Overwatch's comparison to TF2 may have just been ingenious free advertising for Valve. These new players came to the genre not because of TF2, but maybe because they loved Blizzard or the 3D MOBA feel. And this is where Valve needs to capitalize. Whether they like it or not, TF2 has been thrust into the spotlight once again. If Valve can grab hold of some of these new Overwatch players and hook them to TF2, TF2 could be revitalized, and maybe even start to become one of the most played multiplayer games. To do this, Valve has to work far harder on TF2 than they have in the past. Valve needs to be able to create an update that revolutionizes TF2 and gets a new player's attention. We need more than just a few new hats in a crate. What Valve needs to do is add something that players have not seen before, something so unique and so awesome that Overwatch could never have dreamed of having. Now, that might sound like an impossible task, but let me assure you that it is not. Like I said, all TF2 needs is a massive update along the lines of maybe MVM, or an update that adds more game-changing weapons or game modes. Or even just a competitive update that actually works as intended. If Valve could focus its efforts on making just one awesome update like that, TF2 would have momentum to continue going for years. Ultimately, TF2 really can be revitalized, but it just takes a little bit more effort than just selecting a few decent workshop items and chucking an update together. And just think of how awesome it would be for all of us as gamers if Valve and Blizzard really competed. We would get amazing new maps and heroes from Overwatch and game-changing weapons and game modes from Valve. It would be like Christmas every few months. If Valve can do that, I think we can safely assume that TF2 has got a pretty awesome future ahead of it. Until then guys, thanks for watching.